Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today we will be discussing, analyzing, and reviewing My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Rousseau. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok
her
at
last
Literary
name is
Liberation.
Russell.
Russell, however you want to say it.
It's Russell.
R-U-S-S. I don't know what. I thought there was only one S. Russell.
Yeah.
Okay. From Massachusetts. I don't know how East Coast people say it. Maybe it has a different little finesse.
No, they just say Russell.
I digress.
What do you think this is, French?
Rousseau. Sounded nice.
Anyway, sorry.
I don't even know where I was at. Thank you very much.
Well, you said her name wrong. So for more content outside of our podcast, check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation.
And Twitter at LitLib Podcast. I'm your co-host Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host Kristen. You can find me at KRXXTXN on all social media platforms.
See, that's cutesy. When we do it together, we help each other. Very.
Only because you can say it after like 5 times.
You know what? Maybe that'll help. And it gets a little bit more charisma. Gets our charisma points up. Anyways. Side-eyeing. Today, we're embarking on what I thought was an older book. I'm going to be honest. My Dark Vanessa has been...
I thought so too. I thought it came out in like 2005 or something.
I thought it came out 2005, 2012. Lo and behold, it came out March 10th of 2020, My Dark Vanessa. I have seen this book floating around on Book Talk since the epoch.
I feel like I've seen it like before Book Talk ever existed. That's why I was like I feel like I remember seeing this book in like high school or something. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I remember seeing it.
No, if it's the cover or what, but I think that's perfect because it is set in like what, 2001?
Early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s. Starts in like 2000 and I think it goes to 2001.
And then it goes to 2017.
So we have dual timelines. If you don't know what this is about, this usually is like lumped into the same type of books. People that read like The Bell Jar and Lolita, like classics. This is teetering on being considered a like newer aged classic, from my understanding, because of what it's able to discuss. It is lit fic. We've been on a bit of a lit fic kick the last couple of months,
and I'm tired of it. I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
Well, that's too damn bad. I don't know why. It just happened that way.
Yeah. Lots of lit fic this year.
But this book in particular piqued my interest, mainly after reading what it was about, and I knew something wasn't hit well because it's about a girl getting groomed by her 42-year-old English teacher.
Yeah.
And then I saw how popular this book was just on Goodreads alone. It's
how many
insane.
Reviews does it have?
388,000 ratings.
Dang, that's actually crazy.
No, for real, 4.10 stars. So it's a very, I would say, like, solidly rated book. People love this book. Yeah. Even like the 1-star, 2-star reviews, there really wasn't that much. People love it. And 45,000 people have written physical reviews just on Goodreads alone. This isn't like Amazon. This isn't, I don't know if anyone used anything else prior to 2020 for rating books. It got nominated for several different awards. It did not win anything so far, which is quite surprising.
Really?
To me. I don't know why. Nothing. I just saw, again, this is on the Goodreads. There's a little tab that shows you awards, nominations, and I didn't see it win anything in that regard. I think it probably made like the
what it was up against
bestseller.
Well, because it looks like it was published right before COVID. March 10th, 2020. So it's like right before everyone was on lockdown, which is probably a crazy time to publish a book too.
Yeah, I guess Kate Elizabeth Russell, there's not a lot about her from what I was able to tell. This is like her only book. She has another book where she did, it's like a nonfiction, like literary type
about Lolita
analysis of Lolita,
Yeah.
which makes sense given the content of this book and the times that, like,
Mhm.
Nicola I can never pronounce his name. The man that wrote Lolita and a lot of other, books. It makes sense. Like, the subject matter, them
Mhm.
doing that, but that's it. There's nothing else. I'm not even seeing anything in the works. There's no movie, no TV show, which I think is good. I don't think it needs
No.
that. I like
It
the
ended up
way it
being like
is.
that 13 Reasons Why TV show or something.
Well, and, like, I've seen so many things from early 2000s Lifetime. They were all about talking about this because this was a really relevant thing happening
It reminds me of
in the
like
early 2000s between teachers and
Pretty Little
students.
Liars. I don't know if you watch that show.
I did not.
Well, there's like literally one of the main romances for that show is a student and a teacher. Dead ass. Like, and it's like barely critiqued. It's just like, oh, that's normal.
Which is so strange because
Which
I
is
remember there
really
was a Lifetime
bizarre.
movie, which I'm sure you've heard of this because your mom was just super big into, like, true crime, about the middle school teacher who got and groomed her middle school student, who's a male student, female teacher. She got pregnant, went to jail, and they're still together.
I feel like I don't know if I like my mom told me about it, but I feel like I do remember seeing like an article about that where she was like grown, like she's like old too, not even like young. Like she's old the whole time.
She was at least, I think, in her late 20s or 30s. I think she
Yeah,
had, like, a family. Like, one of her kids was, like, the same age. It's, like, really fucked. Anyways, this
yeah.
was, like, the perfect book because I remember watching that, and the way that movie was filmed is very weird. So, if
Oh,
you are looking for a book that is going to be like those things that maybe you watched in the early 2000s or you've heard about, but you want like that social commentary, I think this is going to be the book for you because of the way it ties back into the Me Too movement that was happening in 2017.
yes.
So it was a really nice segue for the author to analyze the Me Too movement using this character who is a very, I would say, I think Chris and I are on the same wavelength here. A very unlikable main character. We get to see like why she is
Yeah.
the way she is.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredibly like complex book, and it's definitely one of those books too where it almost reminds me of like The Bluest Eye in ways too, like with about like the cycles of harm that we talked about whenever we read The Bluest Eye. And I feel like this is another one of those books that kind of does it too, where it's like ends up like talking about like why abuse happens and what are not while this doesn't really discuss like ways to combat it necessarily. It's more just like presenting, I feel like, a story in that like about it rather than
And from what I read in some of the 1-star reviews of this book is people think that it was way too heavy-handed and like a quote unquote romance. This is not a romance book. I'm
no.
so sorry. I don't think you know how to read. And I say this like as
That's
kindly as I
crazy.
can. The people were like, "No." It's like, "Then why are
Well,
you romanticizing?"
I don't I the thing is that you don't necessarily, I don't think, can blame people that go into this thinking that it's a romance, but if you finish reading it and then you're like, "Oh, was this a romance that I read?" then you're dumb. Like, because I think it's kind of almost presented as a romance novel, because even whenever I was reviewing it on Fable, it was like, "Oh, how spicy would you rate this romance book?" And I was
Gagged.
like,
No.
"Romance book? Spice? Hello? Like, these are on page scenes of child rape. Hello?"
So if you don't know, trigger warning,
Oh,
before
yeah.
this episode, we will be
Before we
talking
get
about
into it.
these scenes. Um, I wouldn't call them erotic scenes, but you're getting like sexual interactions between the two characters. It full sends it and goes
Yeah.
there, which I don't think it's done distastefully personally, which some people said it was distasteful. They thought they needed the way that people approach this is they were expecting a lot more like respectability politics within it and
Yeah.
like no, we're not going to dive into it. I do think it was necessary so that you can understand the complete process of
Yeah.
somebody being groomed and being harmed in that way because people don't get it because
Not
of,
everybody
the
experiences
culture with
abuse.
the
Yeah.
society we live in. So, if you are going to read this or listen to this episode all the way and you haven't read it, those are the themes we're going to talk about because it is the entirety of the
Yeah.
book. Kristen, we could get into our ratings before we get into spoilers because I
Yeah.
think that's about all we can really talk about without getting too into it.
No, yeah, I don't really think so. But I mean, I do think I almost wish this was like a story that like men read, though. Does that make sense? Because I feel like
Yes. Yeah.
as being like feminine presenting and a woman in the world, like a lot of these things that Vanessa experienced and that she went through, like they're very hard, yes, but I don't feel like they're so distant from a reality that most women have seen or experienced. Because what is the statistic? Like most women have been like assaulted in some type of way by a man. Like it's like over half.
Um,
It's like a high percentage of women.
According to, I think it's the Rain stat, because I did pull all the stats for it. One out of every 6 American women has been the victim of attempted or completed rape in her lifetime. So
Yeah.
14.8% did 2.8% attempted.
Yeah, so like that's a lot of people, that's millions and millions of women in America just itself, And I think like this is one of those books that I think especially too that I don't think, especially if you're not around like girls or women, like you would not see how being groomed and warped can change someone's perspective entirely. And I wonder if why this book is so popular too, because at least like with my age, especially, whenever I was growing up, it's kind of just now like getting big on the internet, like where like every kid my age had a cell phone by the time we were in middle school and stuff like that. And there's so many times, even myself, even everybody I knew would be. Did you know the app Kick?
I was gonna say
Yeah,
the kick controversy. It's not even
yeah,
controversy. It's about children having access to messaging.
yeah,
Kick was not a thing when I was in middle school. However, I knew how to get into like chat rooms and to like talk to people when I shouldn't have been on
yeah,
the internet. So this
yeah.
is a very relevant thing.
Yeah, especially like with children's access to things like that. And I think that's one thing I think like at least with this generation is that maybe not necessarily parents are. I think they have gotten better about monitoring what children are doing online compared to what they were before. The dangers of the internet are really true, and you even have like the shows like To Catch a Predator and stuff like that. But then how realistic can these shows be whenever they're also profiting off of children being exploited as well, you know? It's a really complex
Exactly, and
story.
I think, To Catch a Predator, which I haven't watched that in a really long time,
Me
the vast
neither.
majority of people who are affected by sexual, like, violence or, even, like, children, you know the person. So it's not just,
Yes,
like, a
yeah.
random always on the internet. It's more than often than
Mhm.
not, it is somebody you know, which I thought this book in particular did a really good job of delving into
Yeah.
that the whole process of what happened leading up to it. So we'll have to get into we have to. I rated it 4.25 stars. I've been teetering on the edge of adjusting this to go a little bit higher, but it was paced a little bit slow and there is a little bit more like fluff in here than I think was necessary. I think it could have been like, I don't know, 50 pages shorter,
I do
75
think
pages shorter.
some of the stuff is a little drawn out, but I think it almost makes sense for the character. I give it 3.75 stars because I'm just not a litfit girly.
Yeah, cause she's like a
But like
15-year-old
she's
girl.
like, yeah.
So, it makes sense, like,
Yeah.
her being, like, sad and emo
Woe is
listening to Fiona
me.
Apple.
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh my god, I was probably this insufferable."
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I know I was that insufferable, but also like being an adult now and aged out of that demographic, it very much feels like, and this is why like it's so crazy to me where like you just have people like this that are just like obsessed with children and grooming children. I would be so annoyed if like I cannot even hang out with my 19-year-old sister without being like, "Oh my god, grow up. You're such a child." Like it pisses me off so bad.
So, I know there's if you are a teenager, most of our
Yeah.
listeners are
Or not.
older, but if you are, like, a younger teenager, like you're a minor, just know it's okay to not grow up super fast. So if people are like, we're gonna refer to
Yeah.
Vanessa as a child because and
She
it's like
is.
the adults are right. They are
Yeah.
right. And like you want to be an adult, but you just aren't. And
No.
that's okay.
And
And
I think this is my
that's
criticisms
why you
are all
should probably
spoiler
read this book.
zone. Yeah.
Because I
I
do think this
literally
should be a high school reading.
spoiler zone specifically for My Dark Vanessa. I think you should read it, especially if you haven't. I think most girls will be able to at least relate in some aspects or watch this. And then if you're a man, I don't care what the fuck you read. You have to read this. I think you should read it anyways.
Dude, I think that you should read this and then read The Will to Change by Bell Hooks.
There you
And
go.
then you're gonna be set. It's gonna set you in a good direction.
Mhm.
And then if you have a problem with anything, you DM me and I'll set you straight. Okay, we
Okay.
can get into it.
Mhm.
I'm
I'm looking at
I
these
have so many.
statistics you have. They're crazy.
I tried to pull some statistics. I pulled quotes. One of the things going through my head while I was reading this is a lot of what was present in Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates. I just read this for the first time. It's not my favorite piece of feminist literature I have ever read. However, I do like all of the stats about the Me Too movement, which is a
Mhm.
relevant theme. So I was thinking
Yeah.
back to all of the instances to this, and it is so interesting looking back and seeing the types of articles that were put out in regards to the Me Too movement, because one of the biggest lies that was propagated by Jacob Strain in this book and also by like the mainstream media is that it was ruining men's life. That like
Yeah.
this whole thing coming forward was ruining their, and that has been proven to be false.
False. False. Not true.
False, not true. Facts over
Like,
feelings.
yeah.
Real like nothing
In
happened, and I
reality,
think that's like,
yeah.
oh, you go, you go.
Well, because I was just saying, because we discussed this a little bit earlier, but it just reminded me, like, even so much of like the way that I actually appreciated that this book did critique the Me Too movement because, like, obviously, like the Me Too movement, I'm not gonna shit on it and be like, oh my god, this should have never happened, sort of thing. Like, obviously, it is an objectively good thing, but it's like, what's the point of it happening if it's not gonna actually cause changes in anything? You know what I'm saying? Like, one of the biggest people that were critiqued for like Harvey Weinstein or whatever. And from my understanding, ain't nothing happened to that man for real. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure he's still doing shit in Hollywood, blah, blah, blah. Or even people like Johnny Depp, where there was this huge trial about Amber Heard and her, like, speaking up about abuse that she suffered. And then literally everyone is just like, actually, she lied. So we don't care about Me Too at all. Like, literally, like, it was all like talk almost rather than it was actual like activism. And I think that's was incredibly frustrating to have as like a movement. Even like calling like awareness to things is good, but I think you have to call awareness and then also do something about it, not just talk about it, which is the problem with
Yes.
liberalism. Like, to be honest, like, kind of liberalism, not gonna lie.
And again, this is like another thing that wasn't, I don't think it a completely intentional part on the author, but she did highlight how women also help to uphold this system of oppression against women, like this very
Mm-hmm.
specific avenue that is like rape culture or just young women and like young teenage girls being exploited by older men. Women hold a place, whether it is the moms, it is the people in their lives, because they're like, oh, this is kind of like she has a little bit of agency here and she can make her own choices.
Oh
Your
yeah.
brain is like not fully developed in
No,
the way that
literally.
they ran like a smear campaign against Vanessa,
Yeah.
which was absolutely insane. And you know what? I am willing to bet this actually does happen. I know
No,
there was
yeah.
some comments about an interview that Kate had to do, and I remember it in the front of my book that nothing was inspired by something that really happened. I'm
Oh.
assuming that something very similar happened,
Oh.
and there maybe was like an issue where she had to be like, no, I like this is a fictional. So this does happen. It
No,
just
like,
happened to also
yeah.
happen in real life.
Well, because I think one thing that like almost infuriated me so much is that like the way like obviously like I understand like her mother to an extent, but it's also like that is your child, you know? I think it's incredibly infuriating where it's like your teenage child where you know is being abused by this man and just because like she has that sense of agency to be like, "No, I wasn't abused. I asked for it, blah blah blah." And you sit there and you believe that? Like I don't care what my child is saying. You know? Like, that man's getting out like, hello? That man's getting out of here.
If it was me, I am all for, like, we're transformative
Yes.
justice, very much prison abolitionists. However, I have a 13, almost 14-year-old niece, and if I were to find out this happened, you'd
Yeah.
catch me on the 5 o'clock news. Like, this is not that's what's getting transformed. I'm
Yeah.
making immediate
Like, the fact
immediate
is,
changes in life,
because
like,
of
it's
our
crazy.
current system of government would do nothing to these individuals that need serious help, obviously. But since they're not gonna get any help under this current regime, I know what I could do that'll help everyone else in this current regime, is the kind of idea that I think me and Mariah have right now. But,
Hypothetically speaking, in Minecraft.
yes. Not I don't own a gun, so but
Well, okay, we're going there. Uh, Jesus Christ. Where are we going with this? What
yeah,
themes? I think because it does bounce all over the place. I thought
yeah,
it was super interesting. I read a before we got on, and it will be linked from what I'm able to extract from this peer-reviewed, I think,
article.
what was it? It was about educator sexual misconduct
Oh yeah,
with elementary to teenage kids, but like the way that this came out in 2025, that teachers, the behaviors that the educators were using was fascinating because it mirrors this book so close,
yeah,
and this, like, it came out this year, right? Like, hold on, let me look at this. That's 83% selected a child who was overly compliant and trusting of adults. 71% were charming, likable, nice teachers. 67% of these educators gave the child a lot of attention. 67% used seemingly innocent touch, or 67% of these educators also used accidental touching or
this makes me feel
distraction
so
while touching.
icky, bro.
It's horrible, but all of these things happen to Vanessa, and Vanessa
Yes,
in her head, because she's just a teenage girl,
yeah,
is
she's
trying to
just a
rationalize
girl.
these things. She's just a
Yeah,
girl, and she's like, I have the attention of, like, a grown man. I don't need boys my age don't know how to treat me." Like that song that was
yeah.
popular in, like, 2017 or whatever, did very much the
What
embodiment
song are
of
you
that.
talking about?
You don't know what I'm talking. Okay, I'll pull it up later,
What
but
song? What?
it was so
But no,
interesting, like,
I
seeing the
yeah
progression
of
of her treatment and how she's able to rationalize what's happening between her, but then it'll happen and she has that freeze reaction
yes,
that
where
we
she
are being told is very normal when you either have the fight or flight or freeze, in instances of I don't remember what we would call that,
survival
like trouble.
instincts.
It's just like survival instincts, yeah. She freezes. She freezes up
Yeah,
every single time, and then as you're going forward to her life as an adult, she's still having these instances, and she's like reliving out the trauma
yes, as
through
an
different
adult.
men
Yeah,
or through Jacob's strain to try to like make sense of it, which is a very common tactic with people who are victims of abuse.
yeah. And I thought like her character is really interesting too. How she just continues the lie of herself for like over 15 because it starts whenever she's 15 years old and then she ends up being I think 32 or whatever by the end of the book. And so the idea that she is so adamant with herself and with others that she was never a victim and that she signed up for this and that she wanted it or whatever she was telling herself is, which we all know is like lies that Strain told her the entirety throughout the book, where he was like, "Oh, well, you wanted this, blah blah blah." Where originally she didn't want anything. You know, she didn't do
She is
anything.
being constantly gaslit in the
Yeah,
most And it's done in such a clever way because I don't know if people like men, right, who
Yeah.
haven't been socialized by patriarchy or have had these experiences where you're, like, told by, like, different men, like, "Oh, no, you're misremembering this." Like, that's how gaslighting functions, where you question your reality, you're like, "Oh, well, you must know better," because he's in the position of power, like,
Even
that's where the power dynamic comes
even
in.
within the way that it was written, and I think that she does a very good job, the Kate Russell does a really great job of writing it, because you can almost see where Vanessa comes from too in certain scenes because of the way that she's been socialized. And that way you can almost be like I can imagine that if I was a 15-year-old girl in that situation, I'd probably think the same things, you know? Because you just don't know any better and all of the adults around her are basically signaling to her, "No, this is okay." Like, whatever. Like, such
Nobody is standing
apathy.
in the way. She's isolated
Yeah.
to 1 from, like, her parents, completely isolated, 2 from her friend, which has, like, an underlying, like, queer note to it,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
know I can't be the only like,
And she
she
definitely had
it's
that with
never
her
confirmed.
other friend too.
Yeah. So, with Jenny, and Jenny gets a boyfriend, Vanessa gets really upset, summer break
Jealous,
happens,
yeah.
goes back, then she gets put into a room with no other partner, right? She gets, like, one of the lucky rooms where you get complete privacy, but she also
Yeah.
doesn't have that sort of, like, communal element of living in a dorm,
She's
so she's got
incredibly
that extra
isolated,
element.
yeah.
The teachers aren't doing anything. They're seeing things, they're hearing rumors, but they're taking Jacob Strain's word, because that's their friend, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, no, he wouldn't do that."
Yeah.
There's all of these, like, it's very beautifully executed, and I appreciate it so much. This is, like, what I wish all lit fic would be. Like, when I'm thinking people are like, "Oh, this is, like, social commentary." Like,
Yes,
sometimes
this is
it's dry.
actually
This
yeah.
is what I think, oh, Tessa Moshfegh is trying to do, and she just can't because this book is all political. This is
Yeah.
why you can't have, like, an apolitical lit fic, and it won't be
Yeah.
effective in, like, doing any sort of commentary. But this it just does such a good job, and I've been thinking about this since I finished it. I just injected into my veins. I just wish it was a little bit faster paced.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's one of those books where it's slow paced on purpose too, where we kind of ended up reading it on like a schedule because we're doing the episode on it too, where it's not like I necessarily sat with myself after each chapter. And the chapters are very, very long too. I think that's
Yeah.
the thing. Cause I would have like the past chapters would be like 30 plus minutes for me. So I'm sure they're probably around the same for you. So I think that's also why where maybe the chapters weren't so long, it would have felt faster, maybe. But I don't think necessarily that works against it because there is so much happening. And I think it's interesting too how much in this book it is referencing Lolita, which I haven't read Lolita, Mariah hasn't read Lolita, but I do know that the author of Lolita, whenever he wrote it, he was writing it because he was sexually abused as a minor.
Yeah, some people like say that Lolita, and I've read the first couple chapters of Lolita, and Lolita is told from the perpetrator of violence is
Humbert
Humbert.
Humbert.
Humbert, his perspective throughout is like the primary. So this is like a reflection, and you're
Yeah.
getting a completely different interpretation of Lolita. So it's done really well. People really misunderstood, from what I understand, about Lolita. Um, so it's interesting. There's a lot of references, and it made me want to pick it up and read it. And I was hoping I'd get it done before this, but I just had too much going on. So
Yeah.
maybe at some point we could read it and review it for this. But I've heard it's very hard. It's a very
Yeah.
hard read.
Which this is not an easy read either. Um But that's what I think too, where like the problem. So that reading this, it ended up reminding me of The Teacher by Frida McFadden negatively because I read. For those that don't know, I've been hating on this book since I read it in February. It's probably the worst book I've ever read in my entire life. Definitely the worst book I've read ever. And I'm not necessarily going to spoil it for you because I definitely think that everyone should read it so that they can start bullying Frida McFadden the way that we bully Colleen Hoover. Because I don't think that happens enough in society or in the world because I think the teacher like straight up rips off this book and the dynamic for one of the like two of the characters, I guess. But the fact is that there's like no actual reflection or critique on it. It's literally just used as like a plot point to have like a creepy ass teacher.
Foul. That is so gross.
Like it's
Disgusting.
literally like I don't want to say anything. I need you to read it. Like Mariah needs to read it so bad, and then we can do an episode on it just so I can shit on it because it's so bad. I'm sorry, but literally the ending is probably one of the most stupidest things I've ever read in my entire life. It's actually horrendous. And like
Ah, fuck. I'm gonna have to do it.
because the way that the teacher is written, it's so oh my god. It's like it like tries to be this so bad. I feel like it's like I don't think Freedom McFadden like supports abuse on children or anything like that, but it's like the way that it's written is that it feels like it's almost like, look, I know child abuse is bad, but let me use it as a plot point to move my story along.
You know what that reminds me of? And one of the main reasons I had picked this up and started reading it so quickly is because it was around the time that the Daddy's Little Toy debacle was happening on Book Talk.
What the hell's that?
I know you did. Okay. So it was a romance novel that was set to come out where the
Oh,
main male
the
character
lady?
knew
Yes, I did see this.
she
Yes,
knew the girl since she was like 3 years
a
old.
toddler
And
in
then,
diapers
yeah.
specifically.
And then when she's like 18, like barely legal, they start a taboo romance, and it was really fucking weird. But people were comparing it. They're like, well, "Why is Lolita and My Dark Vanessa okay and this isn't?" It's like because
Yeah, the
those are social
author of
commentaries. This
that
is
book,
romance. What the fuck?
that author got arrested, I'm pretty sure too.
Yes, in Australia.
Yes, because this happened in Australia, not the United States, but because it was basically linked to like like having like CSA, like I don't know how it
Thought,
works.
but also there was like hypothetically in some of the arcs the beginning pages, I could never look at my child the same
Oh
way after
yeah, it was like
writing this,
the
like, it was really
dedication.
fucked up.
Yeah,
I don't know how
that's
true that
sick.
was because it kind of all died off after that, and it's hard to
Yeah,
find any updates, so and
no,
I haven't searched out the updates because legal stuff can take a while. Who
yeah,
knows what ended up happening? I'm
yeah.
asking. I don't know.
Tell us, please. Um,
The
th-
comments below.
no, but like I didn't know that was the name of the book, honestly. So that's why whenever you said that, I didn't recognize it. But now I do know exactly what you're talking about. And I do think it makes sense. And that's like just another example of how women are upholding rape culture and the patriarchy in multiple ways by presenting this to people that are wrong themselves, that are sitting here, that they can just consume that media and then just like not see anything wrong with it. Because there's always the
I don't
people
get
too
it.
that are like, the age of consent is 18. And it's like, okay, that doesn't make you not a freak or a creep. Not gonna
They
lie.
sound like the libertarians are like, "Abolish the age of consent." Like,
Yeah.
whoa. You're going straight to the
Sus.
gulag. You're that
Yeah.
one.
Um, yeah.
Sorry. We went off on a little bit of a tangent. There's been a lot. Like, there was a lot going on. I just remember seeing this getting recommended. It's like, people I don't know. I work because what was I was reading through some of the reviews on
Mhm.
this, and I didn't quote anyone specifically, but just I remember seeing people saying that, like, this was a romance and that it was gross.
Well, it's not a
And I
romance.
just
So, and I don't even like the fact that anybody could view trains and uh Vanessa's. I keep wanting to call her Rebecca. I have no idea why. But Strain and Vanessa's like relationship as romantic is actually crazy because this woman is so severely like abused mentally even by him that it's so sad to see. Like I'm just like bummed.
well, it's she's so
And she
deeply
believes herself.
harmed and
Yeah.
changed that she can't see how he would have actually done harm to other people or that the people in this like Me Too movement are actually just like you didn't have it as bad as me, therefore it wasn't
Harm.
real.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was like her own personal litmus test. It's like, "Well, this has been going on for this long, like, are you sure that even happened?" Like, all of
Yeah.
this stuff, and I feel so
The
her
goat.
therapist is the she tries so hard with
Yeah.
Vanessa, and
I
towards
think
the
she
end of
does
the
a really
book, she
good job,
finally has
though.
a breakthrough,
Yeah.
which is fantastic for Vanessa, but it's hard, especially when you I think what was probably one of the best parts of this book is when you find out towards the end that Strain would talk to Vanessa on the phone about what he was doing to these other very young girls,
Yes.
and it was being done in, like, an erotic way to try to, like, rekindle something that they had. However, it's only a one-sided issue. It's like it was
Yeah.
so it made me feel disgusting.
Well, because it is
It's like the body horror.
it's a really
This is a
interesting
horror novel.
commentary too, because almost that the way that Rebecca, see, I don't know why I want to keep calling her Rebecca. Vanessa, like, feels that she almost like contributed into that harm as well, because she did nothing to stop it while she knew it was happening. And what was so interesting too, whenever she was talking to Taylor, one of the other victims or whatever, and then she was like, "Oh, like he groped me," and she's like, "Well, that ain't shit. I've been raped by him for years, and you don't see me crying about it," sort of thing. Where it's like, yeah, that's because you're deeply harmed and you're deeply like suffering, but you can't even like you've been because that happened to you so young and your brain wasn't fully developed, that you of course are viewing that with that still that rose colored lens, because that's how you were socialized, you know.
Taylor's character is really good too because she and Jenny stand in for this. I don't even know what to call, like, a specific kind of feminist, I guess liberal feminist, or suppose like an unprincipled, like they're not principled, but you know what I mean, like
Yeah,
the relative where they're like,
they're
if you
trying
had
to do.
spoken up sooner, we could have like gotten this like nipped in the bud. It wouldn't be happening. You have to speak out. Like
Yeah.
all victims need to speak out, and that's a very hard thing for people. And
Mhm.
Vanessa is not wrong in not wanting to make this publicly her
Yeah.
identity, and
Yes.
nor do I think that everyone who is being harmed in that way needs to, because there is such tremendous backlash,
No,
which
literally.
Taylor learns, and what happens of it? Nothing, because the school board is actually like, our internal investigation discovered that nothing actually happened,
Yeah.
which happens
Um
all the fucking time.
well, that's the thing too, and I thought it was an interesting comparison too, because there was a comparison Vanessa makes to Monica Lewinsky. Uh During the Clinton administration, I guess for those that don't know, it was basically found out that Bill Clinton was having relations with one of his interns, Monica Lewinsky, who was obviously she was an adult at the time, but she was still significantly younger than him, and she was an intern. So like imagine getting preyed on by your boss, somebody that's an authority figure to you. They can easily ruin your life if you don't comply to what happens. And that's the same thing that even happened to Vanessa. She complied with everything Shireen told her to do, and she still ended up worse off for it. She never got to experience any of her dreams that she wanted.
And I also think with Vanessa, when she was finishing up her college, like, education, I don't know if she properly finished her degree or if she
I
was
think
working on her master's.
she got her degree, like her bachelor's, but I don't think she ever got her. She was going to go to graduate school, but she never went to graduate school, basically. So
Because of her teacher. Was it Harold? I think it's
Henry,
Harry something. Henry. Yes. I think that sounds right. I thought that was another really interesting dynamic because you have like
yeah,
this professor who marries his student, but because they're adults, it's fine, even though there is like a huge age gap, and like she was a
yeah,
younger student from our understanding.
she was
It's not like she
19.
was 28 or something and
Yeah,
he was 35.
yeah,
It's another one of those really weird situations, but then he's also lying to her, and Vanessa quickly realizes, she's like, all these men are shit. They are
yeah,
all doing the same thing. Every man I meet talks the same way. And she picks this
yes,
up very early in her life when
yeah,
she's like 16 years old, and she's still not like reconciling like the trauma that's happened to her because she's still like deluded because of the grooming with like the older men at the bars and stuff, and then her
Yeah.
getting into chat rooms and talking to older men, and it's just like
Yeah.
they're all acting the same because they all have like a level of expectations from younger women.
Yeah.
And I think
Like,
it's just a really nice touch to add into this. It's just how encompassing this is for many, if not all, young women
yeah.
living in at least the United States. I can't
Yeah.
verify the stats for everything, but patriarchy exists everywhere. It has not been abolished.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Um
But with your help, we might be able to solve that problem.
it is really it's such a complex story, and I feel like there's no way that anything like this could ever be done perfectly either. Just because there are so much nuances and complexities and contradictions to the human kind and people and everyone, which is true. You know, like with Vanessa's character, like obviously she is an unlikable main character that you want to feel bad, but sometimes she even makes it hard for you to feel bad for her because she'll sit there and berate these other women and start treating them the way that she was treated. And there's even like this scene where the like she's working at the hotel or whatever, and then like a man comes up and it's very obvious he's about to go take a teenage girl up to the hotel with him, and she does nothing about it, where she continues to be passive. And so then it shows that like she is continuing these cycles of abuse as well, which is very true in that aspect. But it's also like these are like the people that I wish like I could have a conversation with, the people that would just like sit there and do nothing, because I'd like to imagine like if I were in that situation, I don't think I could say nothing personally.
But even then, had she, like, it makes you wonder, like, what could she do?
Yeah.
Because if she, like, we know that going to the police, there's a reason, like, people don't
Yes, don't
report
report.
any of this to the police. They don't always do anything because, for all we know, they would have had some sort of alibi. And
No, yeah. I mean, the
it,
most you
with
can
the
do
way
is
that
at
it
least,
goes,
I think one thing that, like, at least what we can try to do is if you see, like, just checking on other people, just is such a simple task where, like, even you can have people deny it, like Vanessa does, where she is so adamant nothing happened. She's not abused, she's not groomed, whatever. But I think if you even just stick that hand out to someone that needs help, that maybe doesn't even realize that they do, somebody will eventually take it. You know, somebody will realize that, like, hey, this is not something that I want to be in, especially younger people. And I think, especially if you're older, you have more sense of authority. People do appeal to authority. And if you're, I think that's what the main problem is with like Vanessa's story and why it was gone on the way that it was, is because she even saw all of the women that were around her just accept it for what it was rather than trying to do something about it until later in her life, whenever she has that ex-boyfriend that's like forcing her, that he was the one that really had to do something for her to get her to even just go talk to like a therapist.
I think book does a really good job because it's so victim focused in the same way
Mhm.
that like Notes on an Execution, even though you get like the alternative perspective, you're getting the victim perspective. So it makes a good case for why, in my opinion, like men have a place within the feminist movement. Like they have to unlearn this. Like you are
Yes.
the ones perpetuating this.
Yes.
You have to unlearn that and actively do a better job because you also are standing in the way. You can't just be like the boys. Like you can't just like uncritically support them. You have to actively work on that.
Yes.
And I hate when, and I know it's funny. I know it's funny to be like, I'm a misandrist. And it's joking. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
People are mad. You have a right. But, like, genuinely, within the feminist movement, like, men do actively have to unlearn everything that they have been taught so they aren't being perpetuators. And a lot of them don't know, like, the first thing
Yeah.
of what to do or where to go. Which is why, like, people recommend, like, you need to read, like, bell hooks. I cannot plug this book enough because I read it recently and it's living in my fucking head rent-free because it is, like, the perfect encapsulation because there really isn't any, like, feminist theory that is geared towards men so that they can stop perpetuating the violence. And, God, it's such an important piece. You have to be like the cog in the chain. Like, white people have to unlearn white supremacy. Like, we can't just like not read the stuff. Men also have to read like the feminist literature. I'm sorry, you have to do the work.
Yeah,
it's just
but
part of it.
And that's the thing too, is that it's not, like, again, it's not only men, of course, like, either, because like so many liberal women and would benefit too from reading some actual feminist literature and like other like works to unlearn like the things that just are taught like so naturally here in the United States. And I think whenever people don't even understand too is that like whenever you're getting taught like these things like white supremacy or like living like being like the true patriarch or whatever, the violence, like you don't, nobody's sitting you down in a classroom and be like, this is how you abuse women, blah blah blah. No, it's just like the way that society treats women once they come out about abuse and stuff like that. Like it was a good start with the Me Too movement, but we know nothing came out of that, and a lot of women that are still like coming out with abuse, especially even celebrities, are like actually no, like even like not that we know anything going on with Justin Baldoni or whatever and Blake Lively, but you can already see immediately Blake Lively was the one getting demonized more in the media than anyone else. Which I'm not saying I'm on anyone's side, you know? This is not like a side thing. Like we need to stop being so adamant about picking sides too and just realizing like there's a reason why these issues keep popping up. And how can we stop these issues from popping up? And first, it's by all of us working together to unlearn the society that we were born into that has raised us to be this way.
Apps and collapse. Clip it, upload it, tag the Men's Rights Association, tag the Radbooms, let it be heard here on Literary Liberation, where we stand on this here issue affecting this country, you know?
Yeah, but
I really do. I think it should be read in high school. I want this to be the book that is read in high school with students. I think it's so important.
Get rid of To Kill a Mockingbird. We need to start reading My Dark Vanessa.
No, for real. Like, To Kill a Mockingbird is written by a white woman anyways, from a white child's perspective, to, like, accompany, like, white people's feelings. Like, if you're gonna sub it out, throw some Toni Morrison in there and throw My Dark Vanessa in instead of, like, I don't know.
I don't even know
something else.
What do they even read in high school anymore?
I don't know.
I don't know.
They may not be reading anymore in high school with the way the administration's going.
I don't know, like, I don't know what kids are learning anymore, to be honest. Because whenever I see, like, TikToks of kids in school, I don't think they're learning. I don't know if we really have anything else we want to mention. Specifically, do you?
No, those were, like, the main points. I'm happy that I read it. I hope I can read more things like this is the type of lit fic I want. So if you have a recommendation that is similar to this, please let us know, because this was actually worth my time reading. I didn't feel like it was a waste of time. I enjoyed reading it, not because of like the story. I was like, oh my god, this is like perfection, but like, you know, I'm not enjoying reading about like, children being groomed. I probably will read it to shit on it.
Yeah, that'll be a good episode, I think. I want to bully some books. Anyways, I guess then our next episode will be on Blood Over Brighthaven.
Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong, I think.
Yeah. And if you want to join us while we're reading it, we are reading it with our book club over on Fable. You can just look up Lit Lib Pod on there. There's a link below in the description. You can read that with us and get all of our thoughts and feelings before we have them fully condensed into an hour-long episode. Other than that, anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. I think this
Alright.
is pretty good. If you like this episode, you might like Notes on an Execution. I feel like it had some pretty similar themes, and if you want to know our thoughts more on like transformative justice, we did a pretty good job explaining it in the episode. So maybe go check that out. Maybe check that book out too, because I think it's a really interesting insight in this book just wasn't something that we could really discuss prison abolition within the context of it, because I think it was just more so centered around like the ideology. So if you are curious about that, there will be a link in or a reference to What About the Rapists. So you can read that little brochure or zine if that you're very curious about it. Everything else that we talked about in this, the book Men Who Hate Women, will also be linked. So if you want to check those out, that's where they will be.
Alrighty, and that's all. So thank you, and good night.